Day two of stream 13, the morning session, and we're hearing from Alice Falloon, the 42 officer for Master Rezoning. We're dealing with two matters that we didn't get through yesterday, being the submission of Greater Wellington and the submission of East Lee.
So I'll start with Greater Wellington. I've read the respective evidence of Mr. O'Brien for Greater Wellington Regional Council. Those parts of Mr. O'Brien's evidence relating to Masterton District relate to the mapping and extent of the medium density residential precincts and the NPS HPL. Mr. O'Brien acknowledges that the mapped extent of the medium density residential precinct was addressed in Hearing Stream 2. I agree this was covered in Hearing Stream 2 and covered in pages 159 to 161 of the General Residential Zone Section 42A report, which responded to Greater Wellington Regional Council submission. Ms. Erica Wheatley, Section 42A Reporting Officer for the General Residential Zone, also responded to Greater Wellington Regional Council's evidence on this matter in the General Residential Zone Hearing Summary Statement, paragraphs 12 to 20, and reply statement, paragraphs 18 to 19. Mr. O'Brien's evidence reflects the sentiment of earlier evidence from Greater Wellington Regional Council provided in Hearing Stream 2 by Ms. Zollner in relation to the extent of the medium dense residential precinct. I acknowledge that Mr. O'Brien seeks clarity over the extent of the medium density residential precinct to determine whether this rezoning meets the exemption in clause 3.64 of the NPS. In that, specifically, that the rezoning is 1, required to provide sufficient development capacity to meet expected demand, and 2, that there are no other reasonably practicable and feasible options providing required development capacity. Mr. O'Brien states it is unclear what information was used to make this distinction between areas appropriate for the medium density residential precinct and areas that have servicing constraints. He further notes it is unclear why these servicing issues would not apply to new residential zoning and only apply to infill intensification development. However, Mr. O'Brien does understand that there may be localised servicing issues in specific areas and that there are investigations underway to assess this. I acknowledge that Mr. O'Brien supports intensification and infill development consistent with the RPS Change 1, but with that understands the need to manage infrastructure constraints and to act cautiously in the absence of information. Ms. Wheatley's Section 42A report states, additional areas of medium density around Masterton were not included in the proposed district plan, largely due to servicing issues across the city, including lack of capacity, infiltration of stormwater into sewer systems, and low pressure. I note that investigations are underway to assess and quantify the servicing constraints around Masterton, which will inform a spatial plan currently anticipated to be available next year. I do not recommend any additional areas of Masterton be included in the medium density residential precinct in advance of this work being completed. I concur with this statement and note the spatial plan is currently in its very early stages, but through that work, it is anticipated that more areas suitable for medium density residential development may be identified. In the absence of this information, we have acted cautiously and included medium density areas in areas that are known to have the infrastructure capacity to support a denser level of development. Council Services Manager has confirmed that the infrastructure around the South Belt, South Road site has the capacity to support further development in this area. Some areas in town are known to have capacity issues and therefore cannot support further intensification within the residential zone. And I understand investigations are still underway to assess constraints around Masterton. I retain the earlier statement by Ms. Wheatley and do not consider that additional infill development via an extended medium density residential precinct is a reasonably practicable or feasible option at this point in time.
Would you say retain? You really saying you endorse or agree with?
I agree with Ms. Wheatley. For the purposes of the South Road General Residential Zoning, I remain of the opinion that the rezoning meets all parts of clause 3.6 of the NPS, including subclause 4B, as there are no other reasonably practicable or feasible options for providing the required development capacity. In regard to Chamberlain Road in Somerset, future urban zone, Mr. O'Brien states that Greater Wellington Regional Council sought considerable reductions in the size or complete removal of the future urban zone in Chamberlain Road and Somerset Drive, as they were located on either Class 1, 2, or 3 land. Mr. O'Brien also notes support for the reduction in the extent of the future urban zone, as addressed in Hearing Stream 2. In regard to Mr. O'Brien's question in paragraph 17 of his evidence, relating to why the extent of the medium density residential precinct is not feasible and practicable, I refer to my statements made above and as outlined in Ms. Wheatley's Section 42A report. Mr. O'Brien also seeks further information on these rezoning decisions. It is not clear what further information Mr. O'Brien requires other than that information around extending the medium density residential precinct. I therefore consider the information provided in my Section 42A report, Ms. Wheatley's Section 42A report, is sufficient. Further, as mentioned in my Section 42A report, these areas of Chamberlain and Cashmere Oaks, the Somerset area, were identified in the future development strategy as prioritised development areas in Masterton. I do not recommend any changes.
Reference to paragraph 17 and paragraph 90 in error.
17 of his submission is that?
I believe it was of
Sorry.
evidence.
Was evidence.
Okay.
I should have clarified that.
Question paragraph 17 of his evidence.
Yes, sorry.
Relation to paragraph 89.
Can we just bring up what we're talking about in
Chamberlain Road. Just while Solitaire is looking for that, at paragraph 89, it's some time since we've considered the FUZ Chamberlain Road in Somerset. The reductions or removal of the FUZ in Chamberlain Road, who was the author on that? You, Charles?
Yes, sir.
Who was the author on the FUZ at Solitaire?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I just clarification? Greater Wellington Regional Council are wanting the removal of what we can see there as future urban zone.
Yes.
The reduction or the removal?
Yeah, I find it interesting considering they're spending 350 million on a rail line and a station is right there.
Yes.
It's prime place.
Yeah. What's the question?
The question is the investment worthwhile from Greater Wellington Regional Council with the rail line?
Not sure if I can answer that.
Thank you.
Well, can I ask a question then? Given the Wellington growth strategy that talks about intensification within 1 kilometre of a railway, does that future urban zone fit squarely into that proposal by the Wellington area?
I think so, given the proximity to the railway station, which is that.
Yeah.
Right.
The road.
I presume the furthest extent of that is still within 1 kilometre of the railway line?
2 seconds.
Oh, absolutely. Should be. Yeah. And given what we all know with train station that's there, but So I'm somewhat confused by some of the statements coming out of Greater Wellington that say intensify within a kilometre of the railway.
So what's the question?
Well, does that meet their stated intent that they broadcast all around the Wairarapa 3 years ago
That was
about
probably
intensification?
Probably a question for Mr. O'Brien yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just while we're still on Chamberlain Road, there's a question for both Solitaire and Alice. Just a little bit confused about paragraph 89 of the summary statement. So they sought considerable reductions in the size or complete removal of the FUZ in Chamberlain and Somerset. He notes support for the reduction in the extent of the FUZ as addressed in hearing 2. Can you remind me what was that for both Chamberlain and Somerset? And if so, what was the reduction?
I'm sharing my screen and going through my report because it was.
Can you recall?
Hearing screen 2, off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yes, and-
You don't need to do it now, but
Yeah.
What was you wrote this, Alice, so what were you intending to say there? There's no support, is it note for the support for the GW request of reduction, or is it noting support for the officer recommendation for a reduction? It's just not clear.
I can read out his paragraph if that helps.
There was in
It's in his
evidence.
It's in his evidence, so it's paragraph 16 of his evidence, which states Greater Wellington provided a submission opposing the Chamberlain and Somerset fuzz, given their overlap with highly productive land, and that was submission 94.004. Greater Wellington supports the reduction in the extent of the fuzz addressed in here in stream 2.
Yes.
And I think that's what the relate is.
There's two ways of reading that. He could be supporting a submission that he didn't write for GW, or he could be supporting a officer recommendation to agree with the submission in part. Probably the former rather than the latter.
Yes.
So given that we have gone through this particular part of the officer's report, is it out of line to perhaps ask Mr. O'Brien to come back to answer some of these questions?
Or he had an opportunity yesterday.
Obviously it wasn't front of mind because we haven't gone through this part.
We should have.
We should have,
Yes.
but
Well, we would have read it in advance.
yeah, but can we ask him to come back or not?
We want to have a direction. Let's talk about it offline.
Sure.
Okay, do you want to, Solitaire, are you able to bring up the Somerset one just for completeness? Okay. Yes. Are you with that? So if you could just confirm, Solitaire, what the recommendations were for both of those sites here from the two.
But we're not saying that we recommended any.
I can't recall any.
That's what we're calling.
Yeah,
I'm thinking it,
I
I'll
think
have to double check, but there was originally future urban zone on the other side of Chamberlain Road, and that wasn't dealt with in hearing stream 2.
unless he's actually supporting the reduction in the extent in Ms. Solmer's evidence in hearing stream 2, that's how I've interpreted that statement.
that's what I think he is, because he wasn't involved. He didn't prepare the submission, so I think he's just saying, as a professional planner, he endorses the submission lodged by his colleague. I think that's what he's saying.
That's how I've interpreted his evidence.
I can just get that clarified as part of, for both sides.
Somerset Drive?
It's in that.
It's north of Marston there.
It's on the bend.
Is that just?
It's a series of
set up by Mansell's. Set up by Mansell's.
Passing it's with Bunter Henderson.
Sorry?
Bunter Henderson, that's in that.
Where the zone, the speed limit changes from 50 to 70, I think.
No,
Into
speed limit
100.
changes way back there. This is all 100k road.
Yeah.
Sunset Drive up the top there.
And there's a Vita, I think a Vita got a retirement village up.
Vita are where the sport and active.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Makes sense to put it there.
thank you for that, Alice.
Oh, those are all the new townhouses on the side as you,
Yeah.
you do the thing going north.
To clarify, all the yellow is general residential.
Yes,
So the land behind that is general residential, and it's just targeting that as future urban to tidy it all up.
has been subject to a plan change decision. Okay, shall we move on to East Lee? And we're, probably 10, 15 minutes before we break one, two.
So I'll read through my summary statement. But Ms. Foster has provided a summary,
Yeah.
a
Yes.
bit more compact.
Well, I guess, we just want to focus on the areas that are still in contention. So
Yeah.
you don't need to read those parts of your summary statement. Yeah. Ms. Foster indicated she's not, that are not in contention or she's not.
No, you will try to probably the
Want to say,
read on.
okay, good thing.
That you got it, yeah.
Thank you.
So
Page where we at?
Fine, isn't it?
How we going on this one?
Yes, yes. So we're
Yeah.
starting at the bottom of page 8.
it's summarised here,
Yes.
Ms. Foster's evidence, but I will try and just touch on the outstanding matters in my summary statement. So in paragraph 58 of my summary statement, I discuss requiring more information, that I required more information in regard to the NPS HPL. So Ms. Foster, on behalf of Eastleigh, has provided that further information, and that matter is no longer in contention.
It's been provided. Okay, yes, so
Would you like me to go
No,
into
that's-
detail?
let's just give us some notes. So, was the information provided by
First,
reviewed by
First reviewed the information,
Ms. Milner, Ms.
Ms. Chambers.
Chambers. It was the consultancy that we did.
I can double check.
I can do that if you find it, if you want, while you're. It's in her evidence, section 12 of her evidence.
Galbraith. Opening Mr. Galbraith.
2 seconds, I'm almost there.
I think Mr. Galbraith provided the maps, but it may have been just Christine herself, given the environment's already built, largely built and consented.
Need to know this. So was it attached to her evidence?
It was appendix G on her evidence. And,
The-
Appendix G is the map.
Yes. But when you say further
So
information was provided, was there an assessment or was it a mapping exercise?
It was an assessment within her brief of evidence. The maps accompanied that assessment.
So it was her an assessment within her brief of evidence.
Yes.
on 12.1, halfway through the thing, she states the established residential properties and consented Northern Terrace subdivision are authorised. This creates actual and legal obstacles to their use for primary production.
Yes, okay.
This authorised subdivision and development must be considered part of the environment.
Understood. A combination of planning and mapping. and they first and yourself have assessed that information and agree with East Lee. The area of HPL affected is negligible and the zoning allies with, 3.64.
Can I just ask a question on the legal definition of negligible? What size are we getting up to here? 10 hectares? Yeah, that's okay. So that's just because that's, for me, that's quite important that we're saying, well, at this area, we can say HPL doesn't matter.
That's a good point.
So, you know.
Is that not because it's already been consented for residential development?
Well, hang on.
Is that why that?
Two issues there. One is whether it's exempt or whether, and then there's the spatial area. So I point that Craig's rating is a good one. Horses with horses, and apples with apples. Yeah, so thank you for that. We'll take that up with Ms. Foster. Okay. Now the Riversdale Terraces, the settlement zone.
Yes, so settlement zoning, there are a couple of outstanding matters. I agree with the application of the settlement zone and the Riversdale Terraces over the consented lots as consented through previous subdivisions. But I did not agree with the inclusion of more lots that were previously, more land area that was previously refused subdivision consent. And my appendix for, I'll just check which appendix, but I do have some maps which clearly show
I think it's 5.
those areas in red outline, so it's a bit easier to see. Yes,
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
What was the reason for refusal of the 5?
I believe it came down to dominance and overlook and effects on the coastal character and amenity of the Riversdale settlement.
Basically, it was too obvious.
Yes, or imposing.
The reasons that were given in the resource consent decision.
The commissioner's decision to the resource consent.
Just can you take us through appendix 5 and just so that we understand which terraces is it? Southern, is it the southern and middle? Is it the southern terrace?
So the southern terrace on page 1 of appendix 5.
Yes.
There's that area in red that's highlighted, and I've included an image from the resource consent showing 5 lots.
Yes.
So that was rejected. But I do understand that if I'm accepting the natural open space zone, which I have recommended to accept, that will then create a pocket of general rural zone.
Yes.
Creating a strange, oddity.
Yes. Is there, Mr. Hudson's addressed this in his evidence, hasn't he?
Yes.
From a visual perspective. The review of that by the Blockland School landscape architect. McRae. We need to go back to the original hearing on that, wouldn't we? To that's sort of the coastal environment hearing. Ms. McRae hasn't specifically addressed this issue.
I don't think so, no.
Then what about the middle terrace? Is that?
So the middle terrace didn't have, in the terrace itself, there was no matters of contention, but you'll see that I've highlighted 2 properties to the south. Those aren't part of the original middle terrace.
Okay.
They're in,
Diamond shaped one. So
yes,
yeah. It's that
2 properties.
there's 2 properties, 2 parcels there.
Yes. And so the maps that Ms. Foster has presented don't show that in the settlement zone, but I believe in her evidence she's asking for that to be settlement zone within the Riversdale Terraces precinct.
Um,
In terms of development patterns, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
So, change the original submission.
Yes, it was within the original.
Do you think it's an oversight or an error? Or- and
It may be, yes. I just wanted clarity today from Ms. Foster.
anything else in appendix 5 for the settlement zone?
Yes, that's the
Northern Terrace?
Northern Terrace. So that land that I've highlighted in red, the
Oh,
Northern Terrace,
3 parcel blocks.
3 blocks. It's additional settlement zone that's not included over the consented terrace. So that's additional parts that they're wanting added.
So similar to the Southern Terrace.
Yes.
Yes. Were these allotments, 3 blocks addressed in the resource consent
I believe these are the blocks that were rejected.
in the same way that the Southern Terrace block was rejected?
Just on that Northern Terrace as well, there is it's quite hard to see, but an orange highlighted.
Yes, yes.
So this also wasn't part of the original terrace. It's difficult to understand why, but it's inferred that because of the escarpment slope, that this was part of the stormwater overflow channel.
Yeah,
They are wanting this to be included so it can form a
What's
new.
your position on that?
I just wanted some more information. I'm not sure if this was used for stormwater purposes or overflow. I'm not sure.
What was the, how was it dealt with in the notified version?
Oh, in the notified version, all of this was general rural zone.
And if it was not, if it wasn't, if that orange, the orange or the orange area and the 3 red areas, what's your position on the 3 red areas?
That they remain in the rural zone or default.
On that middle block, below the words natural open space. What's the white zoning? Is that, what is that?
The white area to the right,
Yes, to the right and below, yes.
that is just rural zone.
And the cross section?
That from what Ms. Foster has mentioned, that's just plants, or showing areas that have been planted.
Oh, okay. It's not an open space zoning.
No.
Okay, so that's the terraces.
Yes.
Going back to Ms. Foster's table. Southern terraces, the 6 potential lots, the northern terrace, the 9 potential lots, and the 2 gap lot, which is a nice way of referring to it. Okay. And then item 3 and the table, which is full lane.
Yes, item 3, that was those properties in Middle Terrace,
Are not owned by Eastleigh.
not owned by Eastleigh.
Oh, okay. Sure.
And so
The diamond shaped property.
that's right.
Yes.
So the remaining matter is 0.4, and that
So before you go, that just remind me what your position is on that. That it should say.
well, first, I'm not sure if this is still, I guess it's based on the zoning. I'm not sure if they're still wanting this settlement, but
Yes.
if it was to be rezoned settlement zone, I think it should be part of the precinct, just to maintain that development pattern in the terraces.
Yes.
And
And 4.
item 4, so the last matter where we disagree at this point is 2 of the gullies,
Yes.
and they surround the middle terrace.
Shown on the attachment, aren't they?
Yes, they are. So I did go out and have a look at these. They are largely planted in Indigenous species. I just wanted a bit more information about how they'd be managed. So these aren't being vested with council. In my section 42A, that was a key reason why I recommended rejecting the rezoning. But as I've read the natural open space zone chapter since, it doesn't need to be vested to be all in Crown ownership to be a reserve. Natural open space zone.
So, yes.
Wouldn't it?
I was gonna ask a question on that. Whose suggestion was it to be vested in council? I mean, I would have imagined the regional council would have been a better option.
Is that for the northern and the southern
Yes.
reserves?
Yeah, those yellow.
It's through the resource consent. So the original resource consent included an area to be vested as reserve, and it was accepted through that resource consent process. I think that was in 2005.
But there's no reason why council can't take it.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Isn't this a good outcome though to invest it or to put it into open spaces, which then protects it from any development in the future anyway? So I would have thought that it's a win-win for everybody. I don't understand why you're objecting to it.
It's
Sort of-
more just the management of the natural open space zone, and for me it was whether or not it fit into the intention for the natural open space zone. And since I've been on site and I've seen how it's been planted and its intention, it looks like it does align with the natural open space zone.
So you're flexible to allow it or to say yes to it.
Just wanted a bit more information wanted to hear from Foster how it would be managed.
Mr. Hudson, welcome. Can you hear us? Good morning, Mr. Hudson. You've got your microphone on mute.
He's mute. He's not moving. Frozen.
Mr. Hudson, can you hear us?
I don't think screen froze.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just on the middle terrace map, what areas are we talking about? For
So
the NOS zone?
it's not clear, in my map, but it's the green area to the north of the middle terrace and that green area to the south of the terrace. Those two middle gullies.
Those two areas.
And Ms. Foster includes the full map, but I've broken it down here. There's 4 in total.
John Hudson. John, can you hear us? We're going to take the morning tea adjournment in a minute, but just finally on item 5, there's no contention here by the sounds of things about the precinct.
No, there's no medicine contention there.
Just before we do take the break, can you just remind the panel now?
Hi.
Hello, John. John, I don't know if you can hear us, but we're just about to take the morning tea adjournment and we're going to reconvene in about 10 minutes. So you might want to switch your microphone and camera off and we'll come back and hear from you and the team around 10:35, 10:40. Thank you. Just remind the panel how the Riversdale Terraces precinct would fit within the settlement zone provisions.
Yes, so I included it in my evidence. It would be,
What paragraph number? You're
it's an appendix
on your 42A.
to my summary statement.
Is it the appendix 6, the full subdivision chapter, or is it the appendix previous one, which is the settlement zone?
Appendix, so are you asking for the provisions?
I just want to know, I don't want to know further, I just want to know how the precinct would operate.
Yes, so there would be a mapped extent over the
Within
Riversdale.
the settlement zone, but
Yes.
it wouldn't cover the entirety of the settlement zone. just-
No.
And so we could Mr. Foster take us through that map extent. Yes. And what's the purpose of the precinct?
At the moment, if we just applied the settlement zone to the Riversdale Terraces precinct, all lots could be further subdivided by about creating a number of new lots, which the intention of this was to reflect the existing and consented environment, and therefore it was considered appropriate to apply additional control.
So the precinct is recognised for built environment. The area outside the precinct, but within the settlement zone is for new development.
Yes.
That's I'm becoming clear now.
With the
Yeah.
passage mark.
Okay. And so there'd be different rules and standards.
Oh, minor, but related to subdivision.
Yes. Regulated. Only subdivision?
There is a one land use control when it was related to relocatable buildings,
Yes.
and that just reflects a covenant, I believe, on the Riversdale Terraces.
Good. And I think unless there's any further questions of Alice, we'll go to morning tea, 10:30, and we'll come back between 10:40 and 10:45 to hear from what is the last matter of the day, I believe.
No.
I think the last.
No.
Oh, of
After
course.
that, yeah.
Yes. That's wishful thinking.
So ET Quests Limited. Yeah.
What is it?